Let me start with an email I received a few weeks ago. I'm going to change the names and details, but the story itself is painfully real. Harold, I don't recognize my wife anymore. We've been married 18 years, two kids, stable life, no major drama. Then she turned 41, and it's like a switch flipped. Brother, if that opening already makes your stomach tighten, stay with me. Welcome back to the Relationship Mind. This channel is about helping men navigate relationships and develop themselves through actionable, practical psychology, not feel good theory, not Instagram slogans. Real patterns, real consequences, real decisions. Now back to the email. He writes that it started small, harmless even. His wife, Emily, began spending more time on Instagram. Fitness influencers, younger guys, shirtless, tan, always smiling. She rewatched Bridgegate again. Suddenly, she cared a lot about how she looked at the gym. New leggings, new sports bras, different workout times, not mornings anymore, late evenings. When it's less crowded, she said. Funny thing was, it wasn't less crowded, just younger. Then came the comments, not complaints, observations. Jason's son grew up handsome. The new guy at work is so energetic. I feel invisible lately. Nothing explosive, just enough to make him uneasy without knowing why. 3 months later, she told him she wasn't happy. She needed space, needed to find herself. No screaming, no affair confession, just that calm, rehearsed tone that sounds mature and usually means the decision's already been made. Another 3 months pass. He opens Facebook and sees a photo. His wife smiling like he hasn't seen in years. Arm around a guy who looks barely old enough to rent a car. That's when he asked me the question every man eventually asks in this situation. What the hell happened? Here's the truth most people won't tell you. When women over 40 suddenly fixate on younger men, it's rarely about sex. And it's almost never about empowerment. It's about panic, about standing in front of the mirror and realizing time didn't negotiate, about feeling the walls close in, about waking up next to a man who represents routine aging and everything unfinished in her life. And instead of facing that honestly, the mind does what it always does under threat. It builds a fantasy. In that fantasy, she isn't aging. She's evolving. She isn't dissatisfied. She's finally choosing herself. The younger man becomes proof that she still matters, that she's still wanted, that she's not fading. Social media pours gasoline on this cougar energy. Age is just a number. You go, queen. But brother, I've sat across from these women in private. No filters, no audience. After a drink or two, the truth leaks out. They're exhausted, confused, ashamed. One woman, 42, corporate director, told me, he made me feel alive. 3 weeks later, he stopped answering her texts. Another, 43, divorced, two kids, thought she found her soulmate in a 28-year-old bartender. He listened, he nodded, he mirrored her emotions perfectly. What she didn't know was he was doing the same thing with three other women, all over 40, all paying for something. Here's the part men need to understand. These women aren't attracted to younger men, they're attracted to being wanted again. The man himself is interchangeable. What matters is the hit, the validation, the dopamine rush of attention that temporarily numbs the deeper fear. I'm becoming irrelevant. That's why the emotional imbalance is baked in from day one. She thinks it's connection, he thinks it's convenience. She's imagining trips, futures, introductions. He's making sure she doesn't tag him in photos. She's falling. He's benefiting. And the tragedy is she doesn't see it because she needs not to see it. Back to the email. The husband tells me he tried to talk to her calmly, respectfully. She accused him of being controlling, insecure, threatened by my happiness. That's another pattern, brother. When fantasy is threatened, reality becomes the enemy. He wrote one sentence that stuck with me. It feels like she hates me for knowing her too well. That's not accidental. Familiarity becomes the mirror she can't escape. He remembers who she was. He's seen her tired, sick, angry, ordinary. The younger man hasn't. He's a blank slate, a stage prop for a story she needs to believe. And this is only the beginning. If this already sounds familiar, I want you to pause and do something simple. Drop one word in the comments. Awakening. Just that word. If you're willing, share your story too. You're not alone in this. And if you're new here, subscribe and join a growing community of men who refuse to be blindsided by modern relationship dynamics. Men who want clarity, not comfort. Because in the next part, we're going to talk about what really happens once these relationships start and why the power dynamic flips in ways no one warns you about. Let's go back to that email because this is where the story always takes a turn most men don't see coming. After his wife left, she told everyone the same thing. I've never felt more myself. He really listens. It's different this time. The guy's name, let's call him Evan, was 27. Worked gig jobs, personal training on the side. No real career yet, but ambitious. That word shows up a lot in these stories. At first, it looked like a win. She was glowing. New selfies, weekend trips, inspirational captions about rebirth and courage. People clapped, friends cheered. But behind the scenes, the math was already wrong. Here's the part no one warns women about, and men need to understand clearly. The moment a woman over 40 starts dating significantly younger, the relationship becomes transactional whether she admits it or not. Not because she wants it to be, because it has to be. She has resources, stability, a home, credit, a car that runs. He has youth, time, options. That imbalance doesn't stay neutral for long. I've watched this dynamic play out dozens of times. One woman, 41, real estate manager in Arizona, started dating a 26-year-old guy she met at a CrossFit gym. First month, it was romance. Second month, it was helping him out. His car needed repairs. She covered it. His lease ended. He crashed at her place, groceries, gas, small stuff at first. By month 4, she was paying for everything. Here's where the power flip happens. Brother, she believes paying makes the relationship more secure. He feels less invested because he didn't earn it. Desire doesn't grow from dependency. It erodes. She starts to pursue and to plan to ask, are we okay? Where's this going? Why didn't you text back? He starts pulling away, not aggressively, just subtly. Delayed responses, less enthusiasm, more distance. And suddenly she's living the male experience. Checking her phone, overthinking tone, paying for dinners, trying to stay interesting to someone who has better options. And she hates it. Not just the situation, but the feeling. One client told me, I finally understand why men complain. She'd spent nearly $18,000 in 5 months. Trips, clothes, covering his between jobs phase. When she asked where things were headed, he said, I'm just enjoying the moment. Translation, there is no future. She called it supporting his dreams. He called it Tuesday. That's the cruel irony here. These women want equality until they're the ones footing the bill. When the roles reverse, resentment builds fast. They wanted to feel chosen. Instead, they feel used. And here's the deeper psychological layer. She thinks the connection is deep because he listens, because he mirrors her emotions, because he seems fascinated by her life experience. What she doesn't realize is that listening costs him nothing. Attention is cheap when you're young and unattached, especially when the rent is getting paid. Meanwhile, his internal calculation is very different. He's thinking about how his friends will react, whether she'll show up at places he goes, whether she'll post photos. He manages visibility because embarrassment kills desire faster than age ever could. She plans weekends away. He plans exits. I watched this unfold with a neighbor in Colorado. Mid-4s, recently separated, dating a guy who was friends with her son's college roommate. She talked about how mature he was. 3 months in, she paid for his truck repairs. 6 months in, she covered his rent temporarily. 8 months in, he left for a 23-year-old barista. She was destroyed. And here's the pattern men need to internalize. Women are not prepared for the provider role emotionally. They think it will feel empowering. It doesn't. It feels humiliating when desire isn't reciprocal. Men have always known this truth the hard way. You cannot buy genuine desire. You can rent proximity. You can fund attention. But attraction doesn't respond to generosity when it isn't earned. That's why these relationships burn fast and collapse hard. The younger man isn't malicious. He's opportunistic. He's doing what young men do when given access without responsibility. And the woman, she's chasing a feeling that can't last. The moment the novelty fades, the imbalance becomes impossible to ignore. Back to the email, the husband wrote that 6 months after leaving, his wife was broke, Credit cards maxed, savings gone. The guy had moved on. And the worst part wasn't the loss, it was the realization that everyone had warned her. That's when the hatred toward the husband often intensifies because he represents the truth she tried to outrun. Stability, reality, consequences. If you're watching this and you've seen this dynamic unfold or you're living inside it right now, pause and leave a comment with one word: reality. Just that. If you want to share more, do it. These conversations matter. Because in the next part, we're going to talk about why biology, culture, and life stage mismatch make these relationships collapse almost every time, and why pretending otherwise only delays the fallout. This is where the story gets uncomfortable, not emotional, not moral. Uncomfortable because it's structural. Because once the adrenaline wears off, once the selfies stop getting likes, once the novelty fades, reality steps back into the room and shuts the door. Back to the email. About 9 months after his wife left, the man wrote again, shorter this time, no anger, just confusion. She says she's tired. The dating feels harder than she expected. The men don't want commitment anymore. He paused, then added, she's angry at me for moving on. That sentence matters because this phase after the fantasy cracks is where biology, culture, and life stage collide head on. Let's strip the emotion out for a moment and talk mechanics. A woman in her early to mid fours is not just older than a man in his 20s, she's in a completely different life chapter. Different priorities, different pressures, different timelines. She's thinking about retirement accounts, aging parents, college tuition, hormone shifts, sleep, health. He's thinking about experiences, flexibility, options, novelty. Sex can bridge that gap for a while. It cannot build a life across it. That's why these relationships feel electric at first and suffocating shortly after. What felt exciting in private becomes awkward in public. Friends notice, kids notice, family notices, and the age gap that felt rebellious starts to feel embarrassing. One woman, 45, tech consultant in Oregon, told me, I feel like I have to stay young to keep him. She started dressing differently, talking differently, laughing at jokes she didn't find funny, staying up late when her body wanted rest. That's not empowerment, brother. That's performance. And here's the brutal biological truth that no amount of motivation quotes can override. Men and women age differently in the dating market. Not because of morality, not because of fairness, because of mating dynamics wired deep into human behavior. A 45-year-old man with stability, resources, and competence can remain attractive to younger women for decades. A 45-year-old woman, no matter how successful, faces declining leverage with younger men who have time, options, and no urgency. That's why the power always tilts toward him. He can walk away without consequence. She can't. She feels time pressing. He feels none. She might pay for dinner, but he decides whether there's a tomorrow. That's not control. That's dependency disguised as choice. Culture lies about this constantly. Celebrities dating younger men are paraded as proof that age is just a number. But those women have wealth, fame, teams of stylists, trainers, surgeons, and global visibility. The average woman does not. Social media collapses that difference and sells fantasy as attainable reality. And it doesn't stop there. Geography exposes the truth even more brutally. I've seen Western women travel to Mexico, Jamaica, Costa Rica, convinced they're suddenly irresistible. They mistake economic interest for attraction. One woman came back glowing about a passionate connection with a 24-year-old local guide. When I asked if he stayed in touch without money transfers, she went silent. That silence tells you everything. The same age woman who feels invisible at home becomes desired abroad because the transaction is clearer. Dollars, not desire. Validation, not commitment. And while this is happening, entitlement creeps in. Many of these women still expect traditional courtship. They want the younger man to pursue, plan dates, show consistency, commit. They can't reconcile that they're no longer the prize in this dynamic, they're the option. One client complained her younger boyfriend never took her out, just came over, slept with her, watched Netflix, left. She asked, genuinely confused, why doesn't he make effort? Because effort follows leverage, and she didn't have it. Lifestyle mismatch finishes with biology starts. She wants quiet dinners. He wants clubs. She's up at 6 now a.m., he's out at midnight. She has kids, responsibilities, emotional weight. He has freedom. They exist on parallel tracks that touch briefly and then separate. And when reality becomes undeniable, resentment sets in toward him, toward herself, toward the husband who suddenly looks stable instead of boring. That's when hatred intensifies because the husband didn't change. Her perception did. If you're watching this and you felt that gap, the mismatch between fantasy and reality, I want you to comment one word: mismatch. Lock the idea in. If you've lived it, share what broke the illusion for you, because in the final part, we're going to talk about the aftermath, the damage, the financial, emotional, and relational cost, and what actually leads to peace after midlife, because chasing youth isn't it. This is where the email stopped sounding confused and started sounding hollow. The husband wrote, "I don't hate her, I just don't recognize her choices anymore." That sentence carries the weight of the entire collapse, because by this stage, the fantasy is burned out and all that's left is cleanup. Let's talk about what actually happens after the younger man leaves. Not the Instagram version, the real one. First comes the silence. The texts slow, then stop. The excuses appear: stress, timing, needing space. And then, without ceremony, he's gone. Usually for someone closer to his age. Sometimes without explanation. Sometimes with a soft line like, "You deserve someone who can give you more." What he means is, "I'm done benefiting. Now she's alone. Not just single, exposed. Her marriage is gone. Her savings are lighter. Her reputation is bruised. Friends who cheered her on quietly disappear. The ones who warned her are still gone. Cut off months earlier as negative or jealous. And now she has to sit with something far worse than heartbreak: self-recognition." She realizes the younger man wasn't proof of value. He was anesthesia. And the pain he numbed his back louder than before. I've seen women lose retirement accounts, funding men who never planned to stay. Home equity drained. Credit ruined. One woman paid off a younger boyfriend's student loans thinking they were building together. 2 months after the final payment, he left. When she asked why, he said he never saw it as serious. That money didn't buy commitment. It bought access. The children pay a price too. And no one likes to talk about that. Teenagers watching their mother date someone barely older than them don't feel inspired. They feel embarrassed, unsafe, confused about boundaries and respect. But their discomfort gets dismissed in the name of mom's happiness. Then there's the professional fallout. Women who spent decades building credibility start making reckless decisions, inappropriate posts, showing up to work events with visibly younger boyfriends, letting drama bleed into business judgment. I've watched 20-year careers unravel in less than 6 months. And the cruel irony: the husband she grew to resent often recovers faster. Why? Because stability ages better than chaos. Because consistency becomes attractive again when novelty collapses. I've seen ex-husbands remarry women who appreciate what reliability actually means. That's when regret sharpens into bitterness. This is the point where culture fails women the most. Instead of honesty, they're given slogans. Follow your truth. You deserve happiness. Therapy culture sometimes enables this, validating feelings without challenging delusions. But feelings aren't compasses. They're weather. And if you build your life based on storms, don't be surprised when everything floods. The hardest truth most women in this position must face is this: the dating market has changed, and pretending otherwise only deepens the loss. Options narrow with age, not because you're worthless, but because dynamics shift. Wisdom and experience are strengths, but not in the same arena as youthful attraction. The women who navigate midlife well don't compete with 25-year-olds. They stop auditioning. They build meaning beyond male validation. They either repair what's real or choose partners aligned with their stage of life. The younger man fantasy always ends. The question is, how much collateral damage happens before acceptance arrives? If you're a man watching your wife go through this, understand something important, brother. This isn't about you being inadequate. It's about her fear of aging, of irrelevance, of confronting an unfinished self. You cannot fix her crisis, but you don't have to fund it either. Set boundaries, protect your assets, prepare for recovery or separation with clarity, not guilt. And if you're a woman over 40 feeling that pull toward younger men, ask yourself 3 questions honestly. Am I running towards something, or away from something? Am I building something real or anesthetizing something painful? Am I choosing from abundance or grasping from scarcity? Reality always wins. You can deny gravity for a while. Eventually, the ground collects its debt. If this resonated, I want you to do two things. First, comment one word: acceptance. Let it anchor the lesson. If you have a story, whether you lived this or survived it, share it. These conversations matter more than slogans. Second, if you haven't already, subscribe and join a growing community of men committed to clarity, self respect, and long term thinking. This channel exists to tell the truth early before life teaches it the hard way. Midlife crises pass, fantasies fade. The only question is how much you lose before you stop running.